Evil is easy to recognize when it's loud, when it announces itself with fire, speeches, and bloodshed. But Far Cry has never been interested in loud evil for very long. Its villains don't just threaten the world, they explain it. They justify it, they adapt to it, and sometimes they make sense in ways that are deeply uncomfortable. Across the Far Cry series, we're asked to confront warlords, prophets, revolutionaries, and opportunists. People who hurt others, not always because they enjoy it, but because they believe it is necessary, or inevitable, or deserved. So this video isn't about deciding who the best villain is, and it isn't about excusing what they've done. It's about sitting with the harder question. When violence is rewarded, when power is normalized, and when survival becomes the only rule left, at what point does evil stop being exceptional and start being ordinary? Willis Huntley is one of the clearest examples of this, a CIA operative who drifts in and out of conflict zones, leaving destruction behind him like footprints. Willis doesn't torture because he enjoys it, and he doesn't kill because he believes in anything particularly strong. He does these things because they're useful. There's no moral framework to argue against, no ideology to dismantle, just incentives and outcomes. If the harm benefits him, it's acceptable. If it doesn't, it's inconvenient. Evil here is indifference. Far Cry 6 modernizes this idea through Sean McKay. He isn't cloaked in madness or mysticism. He's corporate, polite, measured. He speaks in logistics and projections, not threats, and that's what makes him unsettling. McKay doesn't need to hate the people he exploits. Hatred would require emotional investment. Instead, he reduces them to numbers, resources, yield, risk. This is the banality of evil Far Cry rarely names outright, but shows with uncomfortable clarity. The kind that thrives under bureaucracy, distance, and profit. Miguel Delgado fits beside him, though for different reasons. Miguel's cruelty comes from fear. He clings to power not because he believes in it, but because power keeps him alive. He betrays others not out of pleasure, but panic. In a kinder world, Miguel might never have become anything at all. But Far Cry doesn't deal in hypotheticals, it deals in outcomes. Anya Benitez and Maria Marquesa complicate this picture further. Anya believes violence is necessary, regrettable, but required. Maria's morality is more fluid, bending with proximity to power. What's right today may not be right tomorrow, if tomorrow offers leverage. These characters exist to show something deeply uncomfortable. Systems don't need monsters to function, they only need people willing to look away. Some villains hurt people because it benefits them, others hurt people because they believe it's right. This is where Far Cry begins to feel personal. Yuma Lao doesn't simply control people, she enjoys breaking them. Her cruelty is intimate, psychologically precise. She strips people down to nothing and watches what remains. Yuma isn't chaotic, she's deliberate. She doesn't lose control, she exercises it. That distinction matters. In Far Cry 5, the Seed siblings turn belief into a weapon, each in their own way. Jacob's Seed believes weakness is sin. In his worldview, suffering isn't cruelty, it's preparation. Trauma becomes training, brainwashing becomes mercy. Jacob truly believes that by destroying people, he's saving them. That makes him far more dangerous than someone who knows that they're wrong. John's Seed takes this further, where Jacob is cold, John is theatrical. Pain becomes purification, confessions become spectacle. His violence is ritualized, aestheticized, and deeply sadistic. John doesn't hurt people, he needs to be seen hurting them. Suffering isn't a means to an end, it is the point. And then there is Faith's Seed. Faith is not a mastermind, she isn't even fully in control. She is addiction personified, manipulated, exploited, and discarded by the belief system she represents. Her harm is real, her crimes are undeniable, but her agency is fractured in a way that no other villain's is. Far Cry asks a difficult question through Faith. At what point does victimhood stop mattering? Some evils are easy to recognize. Kings, dictators, men who rule because they can. Hoyt Volker is cruelty without ornament, slavery, trafficking, domination. There is no higher goal here, no moral framing beyond power itself. Hoyt doesn't pretend to be misunderstood. He knows exactly what he is, and he doesn't care. Anton Castillo is more insidious. He believes in legacy, in national rebirth, in sacrifice, especially of people. Anton loves his son, and that love curdles into justification for atrocity. Far Cry makes its point clearly here. Love, when fused with absolute power, becomes terrifying. The Jackal operates differently. He doesn't rule a nation, he destabilizes them. He sees himself as honest, a mirror held up to the human nature. Chaos, in his view, reveals truth. Whether he is right is beside the point. He profits from collapse while claiming moral clarity, eroding everything he touches while insisting it was already broken. Strip away ideology, strip away politics, what's left? In Far Cry Primal, Ul and Batari represent survival at its most brutal. There is no pretense of mercy here, no future vision, only domination. Ul's violence is immediate and unquestioned. Batari weaponizes beliefs, using mysticism as control. These characters aren't complex, they aren't meant to be. They represent a world where survival is the only value left, and morality disappears with it. Dr. Krieger takes this even further. No belief, no justification, only experimentation. People are not enemies, not tools, but materials. This is where the scale ends, not with chaos or passion, but with a complete absence of restraint. Every Far Cry game has villains, but only a few become something more. These are the characters people argue about years later. The ones who feel less like obstacles and more like mirrors, not because they're sympathetic, but because they're legible. You understand them, and that understanding is what makes them dangerous. Vaas Montenegro doesn't rule a country, he barely rules himself. Vaas is chaos given a voice, not strategic chaos, not ideological chaos, but the kind that leaks out of a person when something inside them has already broken. Addiction, exploitation, constant humiliation under people more powerful than him. By the time we meet Vaas, he is already spiraling, and violence is the only thing that makes him feel real. Vaas doesn't justify what he does, he doesn't excuse it, he performs it. His cruelty isn't calculated, it's compulsive. A desperate attempt to assert control in a life where control has never existed. Every monologue feels like a man trying to convince himself that he still matters. Vaas isn't misunderstood, he's uncontained. Dangerous not because he lacks empathy, but because he lacks stability. He is what happens when trauma goes untreated in a world that only rewards violence. Pagan Min knows he's evil, he just doesn't think it matters. Where Vaas is unraveling, Pagan is composed, polite, almost gentle, if you ignore the mass graves. His cruelty is self-aware, he understands the harm he causes and continues anyway. Not out of rage or fear, but because he enjoys the view from the top. What makes Pagan unsettling isn't his violence, but his honesty. He never pretends to be righteous. He never claims necessity. And yet, he offers something no other Far Cry villain does. Choice. You sit and do nothing. Pagan gives you exactly what you promised. In that moment, the game quietly asks whether chaos was inevitable, or whether the player chose it. Pagan doesn't want to save anyone. He just wants the world to remain his. And then there's Joseph Seed. Joseph believes he is right, completely, unshakably, and that makes him the most dangerous of them all. He doesn't see himself as a tyrant, but a shepherd, someone burdened with terrible knowledge, forced to make hard choices for the good of others. In Joseph's worldview, suffering is mercy, pain is preparation. Anyone who resists him isn't wrong, they're lost. Joseph's violence is calm, deliberate. He watches people suffer and believes one day they will thank him. What makes him terrifying is that the game never fully disproves him. Catastrophe does come, the world does burn, and in that moment, certainty feels vindicated. Far Cry asks its most disturbing question through Joseph Seed. If someone is right about the disaster, does that justify what they did to prepare for it? Vaas is chaos without control. Pagan is control without conscience. Joseph is conscience without doubt. Together they form Far Cry's true thesis on evil. Not monsters, not madness, but belief. Belief that pain is necessary. Belief that power entitles. belief that certainty is salvation. These villains endure because they don't feel fictional, they feel possible. And maybe that's the most unsettling thing Far Cry ever does. It doesn't ask us to defeat evil. It asks us to recognize it.